Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome to Front and Center, where we focus on developments in the Philippines, legislation that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country, issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. All of these and more will be Front and Center. And you can watch this program on our Facebook and YouTube channel, Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And you can hear this broadcast on our audio streaming over PBS Evox receiver app, and also on our shortwave broadcast through following frequencies: 12.020 MHz, 15.640 MHz, and 17.665 MHz. And this is your host, Jerome Toledo. Let's begin Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
In January 2026, the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, took a firm stand to support Philippine officials who were being targeted by public attacks and warnings coming from the Chinese embassy in Manila and the Chinese Foreign Ministry. The tension reached a boiling point following a series of aggressive social media posts and diplomatic protests by China aimed at specific Filipino individuals, most notably by Philippine Coast Guard Commodore for the West Philippine Sea, J. Tariela. And what happened there? So the recent wave of attacks stem from the Chinese embassy's dissatisfaction with the Philippines' transparency strategy. And the Chinese embassy accused Tariela of maliciously spreading disinformation and smearing China's image. And that event escalated when the embassy filed a diplomatic protest over a social media post featuring an image resembling Chinese President Xi Jinping. And as I see that the social media post from the PCG Commodore resembling a cartoon image of Chinese President Xi. And on January 19, 2026, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun issued a stern warning that actions, if they continue their current stance, the Philippine officials will pay the price for their actions if they continued their current stance on the West Philippine Sea issue. Other officials, including Senators Risa Hontiveros, Kiko Pangilinan, and Representative Laila de Lima, were also singled out by the Chinese embassy for their vocal defense of Philippine sovereignty. And just yesterday, January 21, 2026, the Foreign Affairs Department issued an official statement rebuking China's conduct and affirming its support for Filipino public servants. The Foreign Affairs Department stance was echoed by several lawmakers and analysts who pointed out that the Chinese embassy's behavior likely violated the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. So that's under Article 41 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. So to discuss more of that, we will have the foreign policy expert and international studies expert in the program later on, but we're trying to get him on the line just shortly. But first, we will have a quick break here in the program Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. When we come back, we will try to establish our communication with Professor Renato De Castro, a professor of the International Studies, and at the same time, he is a foreign policy expert from De La Salle University. So Front and Center will be right back shortly, right after these messages.
Mabilis ang trivia, dagdag talino. Heto na ang Dagling Kaalaman.
Alam mo ba na ang Pacific Ring of Fire ay tahanan ng mahigit 75% ng mga aktibong bulkan sa buong mundo? Matatagpuan ito sa paligid ng Pacific Ocean at dito nagaganap ang pinakamaraming lindol dahil sa patuloy ng paggalaw ng mga tectonic plates. Sa Pilipinas, bahagi tayo ng Pacific Ring of Fire kung kaya't madalas tayong makaranas ng pagputok ng bulkan at mga lindol. Mayroon tayong mahigit na 20 aktibong bulkan, kabilang dito ang Bulkang Mayon, Taal at Mount Pinatubo, ilan sa mga pinakakilalang bulkan sa buong mundo.
Kaunting kaalaman na malaking dagdag talino. Abangan muli ang susunod na Dagling Kaalaman.
Paano nga ba mag-register para magkaroon ng schedule sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center? Narito ang mga dapat gawin. Gamit ang iyong mobile device, pumunta sa eGov.ph app. Pwede itong i-download mula sa Apple App Store o sa Google Play Store. Gumawa ng account. Ilagay ang email address, valid mobile number, pagkatapos ay makakatanggap ka ng one-time code sa iyong email. Gamitin ang code sa eGov app para sa verification ng iyong account at ng mga impormasyong ibinigay. Congratulations! Meron ka ng eGov.ph app account. Pwede mo na ma-access ang iba't ibang serbisyo ng gobyerno kabilang ang mga serbisyo sa Bagong Pilipinas Presidential Action Center.
Magandang araw, si Ding Dong Dantes po ito. Kapag may nag-aalburutong bulkan, meron akong reminder sa mga dapat nating gawin. Tandaan lang ang MMG. M. Makinig sa payo ng mga otoridad. Huwag na magpapaniwala sa sabi-sabi, lalo na sa fake news. M. Mahinahon na lumikas. Bago umalis, isara muna natin ang mga pinto at bintana para hindi pasukin ng abo ang inyong bahay. G. Go bag. Make sure na may nakahandang emergency go bag na may lamang damit, gamot, pagkain, tubig, pera at face mask. Madali lang tandaan, hindi ba? Mag-MMG ka lang kapag may nagbabadyang pagputok ng bulkan. #panatag ang may alam.
Maging panatag, Pilipinas.
Mabilis ang trivia, dagdag talino. Heto na ang Dagling Kaalaman.
Alam niyo ba na ang salitang gender ay mula sa Latin word na ang ibig sabihin ay uri o klase at hindi agad kasarian? Noong sinaunang Egypt, may mga babaeng naging pharaoh tulad ni Hatshepsut. Ang New Zealand naman ang unang bansa na nagbigay ng karapatang bumoto sa mga babae noong 1893. Dito sa Pilipinas, kinikilala noon ng mga babaylan, mga pinunong espiritual na kadalasang babae o gender fluid. At tandaan, ang gender equality ay kabilang sa 17 Sustainable Development Goals ng United Nations. Kaya't ang pagkakapantay-pantay ng kasarian ay tungkulin nating lahat.
Kaunting kaalaman na malaking dagdag talino. Abangan muli ang susunod na Dagling Kaalaman.
Front and center. Front and center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Welcome back to Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Still with me, Jerome Toledo. And while we wait for our guest for today of the program Front and Center, as we are going to discuss about the continuous attacks of the Chinese embassy in Manila, as they have attacked officials, specific Filipino individuals or government officials, particularly or notably the Philippine Coast Guard Commander, as he is a spokesperson of the West Philippine Sea, Commodore J. Tariela. And what does this mean? So this recent wave of attacks against our officials stem from the Chinese embassy's dissatisfaction with the Philippines' transparency strategy. Okay, we now have on the line the foreign policy expert and international studies expert from De La Salle University, Professor Renato De Castro. Good morning, Professor De Castro. Thank you again for joining us in the program Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good morning, Jerome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so
Hello?
much. Yeah, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to speak about these continuous attacks of China now against our Philippine officials. But first, the recent attacks on Filipino officials are I call it diplomatically inappropriate or crude, as far as diplomacy is concerned, Professor Rene. So, do you see this aggression as sign of a Chinese threat or a desperate reaction to the Philippines' success in the International Court of Public Opinion, as they say?
Well, first of all, it's a direct violation of our sovereignty and basically challenging our right as a country to disagree with another country. So it's not only a violation of what we call the very essence of diplomacy, which is, of course, to convey a message in a very tactful manner. In a way, it's an attack on Philippine sovereignty. Commodore J. Tariela, as a government official, as a ranking officer of the Philippine Coast Guard, is simply doing his job, basically documenting and announcing to the Filipino people and to the international community Chinese maritime expansion, harassment, and coercive action against the Philippine Navy, the Philippine Coast Guard, and ordinary Filipino fishing folk. So why is China raising hell about this? We're entitled, as a sovereign independent state, we are entitled to basically articulate our disagreement with China. China has no business telling us to stop what we've been doing and, of course, intimidate, harass a Philippine public official.
Also, Professor De Castro, China got irked when their Chinese president Xi Jinping was been depicted was depicted in like in a cartoon or a caricature, which made them angry. What do you say about that?
Well, first of all, according to Commodore J. Tariela, you have those caricature there, but he never said that he was referring to President Xi Jinping. And of course, at the end of the day, simply, the Chinese foreign ministry is simply showing how hypocritical they are. I don't know if you remember, last November, when Japanese Prime Minister Sanae came out with a statement that the Taiwan contingency will be a Japanese contingency, and of course the Japanese will be involved one way or the other. You have the Chinese media, People's Daily, the Global, coming out with really outrageous and really crude caricature of Prime Minister Takeshi. So they've been doing it. Why can't other countries do it? And of course, in our case, again, going back to what Commodore Tariela said, he never said that those caricatures were President Xi Jinping. So that's really the height of hypocrisy. That's really the height of hypocrisy. China could do it, others country could not.
So meaning to say, Commodore Tariela can freely do, or as you know, he can express or depict any Chinese official the way he wants.
Yeah, well, the Chinese are doing it. Why can't we do it?
Okay, all right.
Well, of course, we're a free society. We're a free society. We can do it. In the case of the Chinese, obviously, those caricatures of, again, President Lai of Taiwan, Prime Minister Takeshi, and even President Ferdinand Marcos, the Chinese could not do it without any, of course, approval from the Chinese Communist Party.
But that's beyond that. The main story here is of China or China's expansion across the South China Sea, in the islands, in some other areas. They are calling it or branding it as their own, as they say it. They're part of what they call 9-dash line or 10-dash line.
Yeah, and of course, just today, the Philippine Coast Guard, as of course announced by, explained by Commodore J. Tariela, gave its annual report, and the report states that the Chinese Coast Guard, the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy, had been so aggressive to the point that the Chinese Coast Guard have deployed ships only about 23 nautical miles from the coast of Pangasinan.
Okay. So they're continuously encroaching our exclusive economic zones. They never stop. They never cease.
Never, of course. Again, and that's another point I would like to raise. They're accusing Commodore J. Tariela of, coming out with lies. And they're, especially from the criticism that was, of course, delivered by the Chinese Foreign Minister in Beijing, by the spokesperson of the Chinese Foreign Ministry in Beijing. But interestingly, it's the Chinese, or the People's Republic of China, that is, of course, peddling what Associate Justice Cardio called the fake news of the 21st century. That is, of course, the 10-dash line, which is based on a lie, a blatant lie, that China has controlled the waters of the South China Sea since time immemorial. That's a blatant lie that, of course, been proven as a carnage by the 2016 arbitral tribunal ruling, using, of course, ancient Chinese maps, which basically tells the world that as far as Imperial China is concerned, or was concerned, Chinese territory, or the territory of the Chinese Empire, what we call Chungku, the Middle Kingdom, only extended as far as Hainan Island. But the Chinese Communist Party is, of course, peddling the biggest lie of the 21st century. China has controlled and owned the waters of the South China Sea since time immemorial.
Okay. So still on the issue of Chinese attacks on government officials or Philippine government officials, Chinese embassy recently warned that Philippine officials would pay the price, as I quoted. Is it a literal threat of sanctions or gray zone escalation, or is it primarily a pure psychological warfare?
First of all, China has no business threatening Philippine government officials of punishment, because they're simply doing what they're doing. They're, of course, government officials that, of course, advancing and protecting Philippine national interests against, of course, China's maritime expansion. So, again, what's the point of punishing them, threatening them, if they're just simply doing the same job? We don't do it to Chinese diplomats who are, of course, openly violating the Vienna Convention of diplomatic practices, and, of course, adopting or applying what we call wolf warrior diplomacy. Of course, the DFA came out with a statement just reminding the Chinese to see that it's better rely on the normal diplomatic channel to address disagreements, but not to direct it on the Philippine public in a crude and blatant and rude language.
And we can sanction them because we did not anything wrong, Professor.
No, we don't, because we don't go down to their level. We cannot sanction them because we don't want to go down to their level.
Okay.
We want to adopt, basically, play the game according to the rules defined by what we call traditional diplomacy as codified by the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Practices. We don't want to go down to their level.
And they will be sanctioned under the Vienna Convention, which is Article 41.
We cannot sanction them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because, of course, the convention is there, but you don't have any institution and in the global society that can impose sanction if you violate the Vienna Convention.
Okay.
So this is a case of really a matter of moral suasion. Some countries would, of course, declare those diplomats persona non grata, but we haven't declared any diplomat based in our in the Philippines persona non grata. I have no knowledge that we have done it before.
And we can apply that kind of sanction, Professor De Castro.
Well, recently you have Chinese diplomats being declared persona non grata. One instance just recently happened in Paraguay, and the other one happened, I think, in a Baltic country. I can't remember whether it's Estonia or Lithuania, where, of course, Chinese diplomats were declared persona non grata and expelled from the country.
Okay, that's an interesting development there. So there's a similar case like that, and we will have to watch out on that. But going back here on this topic, Professor Rene, you may see that the DFA struggles with this public-facing society direct attacks. Are there any public diplomacy reforms should the DA or the Foreign Affairs Department to adopt to better counter China's narrative since they have stepped up their game?
Well, we conduct public diplomacy, but the public diplomacy we conduct are usually directed to the other countries. I don't believe, honestly, I don't think the DFA has a capacity for conducting public diplomacy in Philippine society because that's a different ballgame. I don't think Filipino diplomats are trained to conduct public diplomacy within the Philippines. That's a totally different, art or trade that you would have to develop. But of course, in the case of the Chinese embassy, they're operating in a host country. So, and of course, historically, Chinese diplomacy, since of course it's directed by the Chinese Communist Party, operates in a different level. For the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China, diplomacy and propaganda are basically linked together. Again, going back to the history of the People's Republic of China, when you go back after 1949, when of course the Chinese Communist Party actively encouraged revolutionary movements. So subversion, propaganda, and diplomacy went in hand when you talk about Chinese diplomacy since 1949.
Okay. You mentioned about earlier about the persona non grata sanction. So, do you consider that as a drastic measure to address these attacks by the Chinese embassy against our Philippine government officials, particularly PCG Commodore J. Tariela?
I will give the Department of Foreign Affairs the prerogative to determine that. I'm not a professional diplomat. I'm just an academic. So when it comes to that, I think I will basically rely on the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, to determine. Doing violates the very essence of decency in diplomacy, in the conduct of diplomacy.
Okay. Moving forward, Professor De Castro, what should Philippines have done, or what the Philippines can better do to address these continuous breach on our sovereignty?
At this point in time, we still have to keep a bullet. China, of course, has the intention, the motive, the capabilities. Their diplomats are really trained to conduct what we call wolf warrior diplomacy. And this is something that we have to face as we confront China's maritime expansion in the West Philippine Sea, and of course, wolf warrior diplomacy being conducted against the Filipino nation.
Okay. All right. One last point before I let you go, Professor De Castro. So, recently we've signed a defense cooperation agreement with the United Arab Emirates, and also recently we had a Japanese one sign the defense cooperation agreement as well. So has Philippines successfully moved away from as I call it a weak link status, or are we still strategically vulnerable at this point in time, Professor De Castro?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, has the Philippines successfully moved from being a weak link status, or are we still strategically vulnerable? Because recently we had signed defense cooperation agreements with United Arab Emirates and Japan.
Well, I would say we are in the process of strengthening our diplomatic capabilities along with our defense capability through what we call developing security partnerships or strategic partnerships. Especially, of course, I would give more importance to Japan, primarily because of our geography. The Philippines and Japan are part of what we call the first island chain, and of course, both the Philippines and Japan are confronted by a common security challenge, and that's of course China's maritime expansion in the South and East China Sea. So I would look at it in terms of a process.
It's a process that that the Philippines will take regarding that. And also Japan and Philippines has a strong alliance when it comes in everything, not just in economy but also in defense. As we tread along with this threats coming from China, Professor De Castro.
Oh yes, and of course at the same time, Japan, just like the Philippines, is also being subjected by China to, with its wolf warrior diplomacy. Just remember the dramatic, hence Sino-Japanese diplomatic role last year, and of course in the same cases in the Philippines. Well, so literally or figuratively, we are on the same boat together, Japan and the Philippines.
And we should work together now than ever, Professor De Castro. Anyway, thank you so much, Professor Renato De Castro, the international studies expert and foreign policy expert, for joining us in the program as we discuss about these recent developments involving our relationship with China. Thank you so much, Professor Rene, and have a good day. Hope to have you next time.
Sure. Thank you very much, and good morning to you. And again, good morning to our listeners.
All right. And that was the foreign policy expert and international studies expert as well from De La Salle University, Professor Renato De Castro. And with that, we now conclude this edition of Front and Center on Radyo Pilipinas World Service, together with our technical team, headed by Mr. Milo Janela. Also on our webcast and audio streaming, we have Miss Justine Osias. This is your host, Jerome Toledo. Until next time, mabuhay.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.